This is Sports Talk with PlayerAgent3. My next guest is a North Carolina high school basketball coaching legend. 8 state championships. Do you hear me? 8 state championships. The legendary coach, Larry Lindsey. What's going on, coach?
Well, I'm getting over that virus. That's one thing that's going on. That thing is tough, Miguel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is, man. It's just, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better either.
No, it hit Reggie's family terrible.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Carlton last night, so he's hanging in there.
That's Shay's buddy. Carlton and Shay's buddy.
Coach, I'm glad you're able to come on the show. How's the family doing?
Doing well. Shree has Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And it's tough, but like I told you guys, you can't plan. You gotta get ready for things like that. You gotta get ready for everything.
Right. Well, the good thing about it is we're both on this side of the earth.
That's right. That's what a guy said in our church. He said, "At least I'm not pushing up grass."
Yeah. So, Coach, the Youngsville, North Carolina is the genesis for you. How did you get involved in basketball growing up in Youngsville?
Well, Miguel, I always liked to play it even when I was young, but going into the 6th grade, I had polio. And that I kind of couldn't move my left leg. And but the principal, I didn't know if I'd be able to make it, but the principal stayed after me. And he kept me going. And I just worked hard, and it seemed like I got better and better and taller, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Well, was that polio, was that an inspiration for you because you were stricken with polio? Was that an inspiration for you to?
Yeah. I don't think so. I really didn't realize what was happening with the polio thing, but I used to sit around on the railings and watch them shoot in the 7th grade. And then I got back out there and got pretty good at it. And I could jump like a deer, so those combinations fit well.
Yeah, and because ultimately you play basketball at NC State, but what did you break your ankle or something like that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that one. That was kind of not a long story, but Youngsville always wanted to play Broughton. So in the summertime, we all got together and decided, okay, Broughton, you bring some of your good guys and we'll bring our guys. And about 2 days before we scheduled 2 games, I caught my foot in between another player's foot and just ripped my ankle apart, just tore it off. If I'd have stopped then, maybe I'd have been okay. But got this guy to tape me real tight, and I played those 2 games, and then it really tore it up. So I went to state with a bad ankle, and they sent me to Duke, and the guy said, we're not operating on ankles now, and you're stuck with what you got. It basically could have just ended my career. It did in the ACC. There's no way you're going to play with one foot. But I stayed on for that year, but it was kind of miserable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but back in those days, so you left NC State, went to the Army, and then back to play at Pembroke State? Was that?
Well, Pembroke was down, it's not ACC. And I did pretty good there. But still, I had the ankle. The ankle got better, but not well.
Okay. So did you actually play for was it Everett Case at NC State during that time?
Well, every case was a varsity. See, back when I went,
Mhm.
freshmen were not eligible.
Okay. Mhm.
So we had a freshman team. My coach was named Lee Turrell. But
Okay.
every case was a gentleman. I'm telling you, he was a fine basketball coach and a gentleman on top of that.
Mhm.
He was like Miguel Tabor. You know Miguel?
Hey, come on, Coach. I had a little dog in me.
No, you did not.
Just a little bit.
No, you did not.
Yeah. So did that at that point, is that when you decided to go into coaching?
No, I always wanted to be a coach. By the time maybe I got into the 8th grade, we had this principal. His name was E. Arthur Anderson. And he didn't hound me. He just led me, I guess would be the correct word. And he kept me involved. And he coached the girls team. He was the principal. And I would go out and help him some. And I just loved it. I loved it.
Mhm.
And I tried to learn as much as I could. Now, in the Army, I played basketball. We didn't lose a game in the Army.
Okay. Now, but once you took that role as head coach, I mean, you took off with it. I mean, 2 state championships at Youngsville and then 6 at Wake Forest. What do you attribute all that success to?
Well, you've heard the old saying, you cannot win the Kentucky Derby with a bunch of mules.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what we had at Wake Forest. We talk about this a lot. I had good young guys. I mean, they were good ball players and they believed. And then on top of that, added to that, we had great, fantastic parents. Oh, you could not ask for better parents than we had at Youngsville and Wake Forest. No way. They were just unreal.
Mm-hmm.
So that added to the pluses. And that's what you got to look for when you're coaching.
Mm-hmm.
You got to believe in what you're doing. And the coach has got to believe in his players. And I don't know, I always leaned on you guys. When you come back to the bench, I want to know what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one thing that I want to know, Coach, is I know you've coached a lot of great players, and I've heard the stories, especially with the guys during the 70s and the 80s. How did you tame all of those egos with the likes of Mike Morris, Greg Holman, Willie Walton, Chesley Haywood, Mike Justice? I mean, the list goes on. How did you tame those egos? Because those were some, from what I heard, those were some great players.
They were good. But, they bought into the system. It was, Miguel, it was almost like a family affair. We just didn't have that. They just didn't do that stuff. We got them ready to play, and they believed they could win. And they would push each other constantly. And if something slacked up at practice, they may say, Coach, we need to work on so-and-so. Mm-hmm. So they would get busy on that particular player and get him back in line, and they took care of that. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to take care of that.
Mm-hmm. You didn't have any problems with minutes, finding minutes for each of those teams, because, 6 state championships, it's obvious you had to have had some great players.
We had some fantastic players. Mm-hmm. I don't like to label players as this one's better than that one, that kind of stuff. I don't think you ever heard me say that. I've said I've had good players. Mm-hmm. But I don't try to put one above the other. But we had some good ones, like Mike Justice. We had one, do you remember Alvin Mastenberg?
No, I don't. I've heard the name, and I've heard a couple of stories. He's a big man, big guy, right?
Well, at that particular time, he was about 6'2.5". Now he's about 6'5". Mm-hmm. But he could, like, for example, he got picked for the East-West All-Star team, and the college coaches was putting little wages on the side. How many charges would he have by halftime? And the guy, Jerry Steele, that coached at High Point, he said, I tell you, he'll have 6. You know, some of them said 3, 2. Guess how many he had? 6. He could play defense. He could play offense. And then you had Chesley Hayward on the same team. You had Clay Austin. I mean, all those teams, Willie Walton. When you walked in the gym and saw Willie, that was a good-looking human being with a basketball in his hand. Woo. He could do anything with a basketball. Willie could.
What was he? Now I heard the story that he was. By the time he was a sophomore, he was recognized as one of the top players in the nation. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. And I tell you, when you walked in the gym, you recognized it too. He just exuded with talent. Good-looking guy, and you had to look down and I mean, you couldn't help it. He's just good. But we had tons of them like that. They were not big, like 6'6". We didn't have any great old big guys, but they believed that they could beat great old big guys.
Right. So who was that one player from those 70s teams in some of the 80s? Is there one player that just had that it factor? That one player that you was just like, this guy, he has it?
Well, you know, I just hate to label them, but I tell you what, if Mike Justice could see the backboard, that was 2 points. He could shoot a basketball. We were in the finals of the state tournament, and at that particular time, a guy named Dennis Burr was my assistant, and the third quarter was ending, and Mike Justice was about a step and a half on the other side of the half court line. And he jumped up and shot a jump shot, and Dennis Bird caught it coming through the net. I mean, he could shoot, he could handle the ball. We were down by 12 to Vance High School in the districts, and he himself caught us up in the third quarter. I never seen anything exactly like him. If he stole the ball from you at half court, he only took a wooden dribble and laid it up.
Wow.
I can't answer that one. Don't ask me. I don't know. But he'd take one dribble and lay that thing up.
Yeah. Okay. So from what I know, from what I remember for playing for you, Coach, you were a very disciplined coach, and you ran a system that, you know, if you wanted to get on the floor, you had to buy into, you know, what you were trying to do. What do you attribute your coaching style to? Were there certain coaches that you look to for inspiration, or that you look to try to pattern your coaching style from?
Yeah, I stole a little bit from everyone I saw. I like Dean Smith. I like Mike Krzyzewski. I like Bobby Knight. I like John Wood. I just saw all kinds, and a lot of high school coaches. And when I got in, it was most of zone defenses. And I said, there's no way with our height, we can't sit back and play a zone. So we went to work on man-to-man, which you played too. We went to that man-to-man and tried to establish a tempo ourselves rather than letting you do it. We tried to do it.
What about Dean Smith?
He was so far ahead. Of course, there was other coaches like him too, but he was so far ahead of most coaches. You know, he was an innovator. He could like 4 corners he put in. Who would have ever thought of that? He had offenses that he could score off. He could They could play. They could do everything. But there's other college coaches just like him. You know, your Mike Krzyzewski's, your Dean Smith, your Norman Sloan, which you've never heard of. There's just tons of John Wooden. Now, you got to remember too, they were recruiting talent too, but you got to be able to coach talent.
Right. If you had to pick out of all of your championship teams, which one would you say? If you had to pick your best championship team, which year would you say had the better team?
Let's back up just a hair and say which team accomplished the most.
Okay.
And I'd say 1972, because 71 everyone graduated, everyone except Charlie Webb. We had one player with some experience coming back, one. And they had picked them to finish 4th in the Capillary Conference. And they won a state championship. Now that was really something. And that happened twice. That happened at Youngsville once and over here once, where everyone just graduated and left the cupboard kind of dry, and they still come along and won a state championship with not a whole lot of experience.
Yeah, I you know, rest in peace to Charlie Webb. I heard a lot of stories about him as an athlete.
And a person.
Yes, really good person. Coach, I actually remember he used to come to some of our practices. He used to come to some of the practices and talk to us about, the championship teams and give us, some inspiration, give us, some knowledge about the game.
Charlie was just, I don't even know if there's any words in the English language to describe Charlie. He's special. We're sitting in a room right now that he came here in August to see me and stayed about 2 hours. And we just talked, and then he passed away that same year. But he was a special, he could pick things out on the court, and he'd say, Coach, I need to work on so-and-so today. And I'd say, okay, Charlie, go for it. And Charlie would work on them too. He was just, I never seen him mad. He's like you, Miguel. It seemed like you guys always had the same disposition. You played hard, but you didn't let people get under your skin. And he was like that.
Yeah. Now, this is something that I always wanted to ask you, Coach. I know you coached the 1A level, 2A level, and the 3A level when I was playing. Would you say that 4A schools were reluctant to play Wake Forest due to your track record and due to the talent that you kept year in and year out at Wake Forest? Do you feel like some of those 4A teams did not want to play Wake Forest?
I don't think they were afraid of me. They were afraid of them guys out there on that court. Yeah. Because they played hard. They would play. But back in those days, I think, if you got right down to it, I think 3A basketball was, you had your Dominique Wilkins, and that was some good 3A teams. Really good. I thought they had the cream of the crop at that particular time. 3A teams were about on par with 4A. But I don't know if they felt like that. Not towards me, maybe my team, because most coaches would say, you know what? His kids never give up. So that's a plus. And that's a compliment to my players.
All right, Coach, excuse me. I have a few things that I want. I'm going to give you the 70s, 80s, and 90s. All right, just real quick. I want you to give me a quick story on your 70s teams, your 80s teams, and your 90s team. Quick story. Doesn't have to be long. Do you have a funny story for the 70s team?
Funny story.
Yeah.
The funniest, I just don't remember who. Oh, did you know Albert Jones?
Yes.
Albert, we were playing Clayton. It wasn't funny, but everybody thought it was really great. Mike Justice fouled out of the game, and we were playing at Clayton. I'll never forget this if I live to be 100. I go down the bench and tap Albert on the shoulder. Say, Albert, you going in for Mike? He looked at me like, what'd you say? I said, Mike just fouled out. I said, you got a job. You got to stop that good player from Clayton. And we were only up by 2. That daggone Albert. Now that, it wasn't funny, but that I do remember. He held that guy, and we won that game.
All right, that's good stuff. What about the 80s?
And then 80s, I was trying to think of something that kind of unique, because 80s was a good group too. Gosh, they were good.
I can give
This, I've told this story 100,000 times. This is a compliment, really, to 2 guys. I moved Romus Lucas, I think that was in the 80s. Yeah, we were playing Franklinton. And I moved him up because Romus graduated. What year did he graduate?
He graduated in 90.
Yeah, but this would have been because he was a freshman.
Yeah, that would have been around 80, 87, 88, something like that, yeah.
But he was big. He was big. So I go in, and I moved him up that night, and we were playing Franklinton. And Romus goes, Coach, I don't think this shirt will fit me. I said, well, Romus, my policy is if I give you a uniform, that's your uniform until you graduate, if you want it. And I said, that's all I can say. And I left. And we had this kid on the team named Brad Welch. And Brad gave him his shirt. And he didn't have a shirt. And I think Brad told me, said, Coach, don't put me in because I'm not wearing a shirt under this. But he'd give Romus his shirt to play in. That was unique. Not funny, but unique.
Yeah. Well, okay, what about the 90s? You only coached a couple of years in the 90s. Do you interesting?
The 90s. Who did we, what did we?
That was
a hard, so you had Eric and we had some good players in too. But everybody else had these 6'8" and I mean, they were really big. And our guys, they all played just alike. So 90s, the only thing I can say, they all played just alike and played hard. And they accomplished a lot, a whole lot. Because I tell you, there were some good teams, 90, 91, 92. Really good.
What do you think about that, the game, the 5 overtime game that we played in Wake Forest versus Wilson Bedingfield? Do you remember that game?
Yeah. Was it Jeff that hit that jump shot out of the corner?
Yes. Yeah. That
was. We were down by 2. He hit the jump shot out of the corner, and they fouled him.
Yeah.
He went to the foul line and hit the foul shot.
Yeah, that was one of my most memorable games, that 5 overtime game.
I tell you, and that was a good team.
Yeah.
You know, Wilson Bedingfield was always had good talent. And we did too. We never were without talent. We had talent. We just didn't have the big guy. We never seemed to have, big guys. They just played hard. They played big.
Now you retired my senior year, which was 93.
Yeah.
Were you tired, or did you just feel like you had given all you could to the game of basketball?
Well, no, I wasn't tired. I was just ready to get out and travel a little bit and see the world. I went around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was time for somebody else to come in and do their job. So I thought Chuck did a great job. Chuck was a disciplinarian. I mean, he run the ship.
Right. Do you feel like that you were grooming Coach? Because Coach Hess had been with you as an assistant for a long time. Do you feel like he was groomed for that position?
Well, I was three or four. I didn't get involved with the picking.
Mm-hmm.
I just let Winston do the pick. I couldn't do that. I mean, they were all good. Just let the guy at the top of the food chain pick that guy. I didn't want to do that because they were all my friends, and so I just kept my mouth shut and let him pick them.
Okay, so Coach, we're gonna do this word association real quick. I'm gonna say a player's name. You just give me one word.
Okay.
One word about the player. Okay.
Yes.
The first one is Mike Justice.
Good shooter.
Willie Walton.
A good-looking basketball player, if there's ever been one.
Mike Morris.
Big, tall, strong, demanded respect underneath that basket.
Romus Lucas.
Romus played like he was 6'6", but he was only 6 foot.
William Mastenberg.
William was just all-around player. He played on a good team too, but he was all-around player. You had Crudup and Shea and Berg, Stuart Powell.
Yeah, good teams.
Yes.
Last name, Joey Wiggins.
Who?
Joey Wiggins.
Oh, Joey. Oh, man. Oh.
Hard work.
Good work. He'd outwork anybody in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
When he hit, Joey had to work. Joey was a worker. He was a blue-collar worker. And everyone liked Joey.
Good stuff. All right, Coach. Fast forward to 2021, 2020, you have Wake Forest High School, which has a successful football program led by Coach Reggie Lucas. How do you feel about Wake Forest Rolesville athletics in terms of football being in the forefront right now and basketball pretty much being an afterthought?
Well, sports runs in cycles. When I got there, it was golf. And then basketball stepped up. Then football stepped up. And Reggie does a good job. And Reggie is going to work. So if you get ahead of Reggie, you're going to have to work hard.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You can't sit around and hope that players show up because Reggie's going to work.
And Coach, I forgot to ask you this question earlier when we first came on, but how did you actually get the job as head basketball coach at Wake Forest?
There's a guy named Pete Meadows who coached Press Maravich. Pete Maravich, you never heard of him, probably.
Yes, I have. I've heard of him.
Okay, he coached him at a place called Edwards Military Academy. And he came to Wake Forest as the elementary principal. And then he moved over to the high school. And Gene Adams, who's a good basketball coach, he moved to DuBois as the assistant principal. So that left an open. So that left an open for me to leave Youngsville and go to a 2A school. So
Okay.
he hired me. He jumped and I jumped at the same time.
and the rest was history.
And the rest is history.
All right, Coach, this is the last thing I'm gonna ask you. I have a million questions for you, but we can pick back up on another episode. But this is the last thing that I want to ask you, and I gotta put you on the spot. Okay, I know you don't like doing this, but I mean, the people, you know, they want to know the top 3 players that you've coached in your career.
Ooh.
I'm only gonna say 3. Normally people say 5, but I just give me 3, and in no particular order.
Well, you have to put Mike Justice. Guard, Page Miguel, and then woo. You got so many together there, gosh. You'd have to stick Alvin Mastenberg. And I tell you, that was like that 76 team had, they had a daggone good playmaking guard, Bryant Wiggins. I don't know if you remember him or not.
He coached me in middle school.
Did he?
Yeah.
He was, I had so many like all 3 of them, Miguel, that's hard. I'd kind of leave it at 3 with about 200 more that's equal to them.
Hey, I knew it was gonna be tough, Coach, because you coached a lot of players. But again, you know, we'll pick back up and talk more about, you know, a lot of things that happened at Wake Forest Rolesville High School in your career. But I definitely appreciate you coming on the show, Coach, sharing your experience as a coach, being, you know, one of the most successful coaches, you know, from the state of North Carolina.
Well, I'm glad to do it, Miguel. But people need to know the guy that's interviewing me is a great human being too. Fantastic person.
I appreciate it, Coach. I appreciate it. Again, man.
And I think these college coaches need to call you and get on that you interview them.
I mean, I've had Coach Bobby Crimmins on the show, and a few others. So I'm definitely, you know, trying to reach out to a lot of college basketball coaches.
Yeah, you get them, because it would be good for them, and you deserve them.
I appreciate it, Coach. Again, thank you for coming on, and I'm sending you an invitation right now to come back on the show.
Okay.
Down the line,
and I'm not like Reggie now. I'm not going to charge you.
Okay. All right, Coach. All right, everybody. This is Coach Lindsey, Sports Talk with PlayerAgent3.